All right, looks like we have several folks in our room here, and a few more may join us over the next few minutes. Welcome. You are in the Internship Inspire ERGs Enrich panel room. So if you're in the wrong spot, you've clicked the wrong link. But welcome if you are here for this particular panel. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Internships Inspire ERGs Enrich panel. My name is Eric Yarwood, and I'm the Executive Director of the Education Collaborative of Western New York, which is a consortium of private independent high schools in the Western New York region. For the last 3 years, we've been working on a collaborative DEI initiative with the overall goal of creating educational communities where everyone feels like they belong so they can be successful both academically and socially. Creating a sense of community is critical in the D&I environment. Two powerful ways to accomplish this is with internships and ERGs, which is why I'm really excited to moderate this discussion today. I have seen the impact of both, and our panelists today will share their expertise and enthusiasm in building, creating, and maintaining them. But don't just take my word for it. We're going to hear from our panelists in just a minute. One quick comment before we do, let's talk about the term ERGs. Best known as employee resource groups, they may be called other things, such as employee business resource groups, and the way we call them in the educational spaces, and others call them affinity spaces or affinity groups. Some organizations have unique names for them, which you will learn about during our upcoming discussion here. Mentorships and ERGs have one thing in common. They are built around making sure talent strategy is agile, future thinking, and above all, inclusive. With that, I'm excited to introduce the following panelists. Stephanie Peete is the Internship and Career Pathways Supervisor for Employer Outreach at Say Yes to Education Buffalo. Stephanie is well known for her relentless commitment to youth in the Buffalo, Niagara area. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Eric. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Cassandra Mitchell is a Senior Vice President and Manager for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategy and Engagement at KeyBank. In this role, she serves as a strategic partner to senior executives to deliver DE&I goals and initiatives, and is a collaborator with in-line of business partners across KeyBank enterprise to drive DE&I strategies. Additionally, she serves as an advisor and to advocate for KeyBank's Key Business Impact Networking Group Network, which are volunteer groups that are a vital component of Key's diversity and inclusion strategy to help Key attract, engage, develop, and retain a diverse workforce. Welcome, Cassandra.
Thank you. That was pretty long, wasn't it? Sorry about that.
It's all good. A few tongue twisters, but it's awesome. It's excellent. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And our final panelist, Laura Antal, is the Director of Strategic D&I Communities at Sodexo and has been with the company for over 20 years. She currently leads all Sodexo employee business resource groups and inclusion ambassadors, directing 400 leaders on national teams and chapters throughout the country. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much, Eric, and so glad to be with you all today.
All right, so let's get started. Our first question is going to take a little different approach. I would like each of you to share a hard lesson learned during the process of building internships or ERG programs. So in other words, if you had a do-over, what would that be? And so I'm going to start with Stephanie, first from the internship perspective.
Sure, that's really a great question. So I would say we didn't realize how much work would be required on the employer end of our program. You know, we knew that there was going to be a lot of professional development, you know, a lot of workshops for the students, but it was really the same on the employer side. We had a lot of early success with smaller organizations because we were really able to help build the structure of the internships. So that includes writing student-friendly job descriptions and meeting with the key staff who would have interactions with our college students. But it was much harder with larger organizations that already have robust internship programs, a wider reach, with way more applicants and then less diversity as well. It was harder to create the buy-in, and it was really difficult to create that case for equitable approaches to internship hiring when they were already receiving so many applications. So with our corporate employers, partnering with us was more of a charity approach in the beginning, to be honest, but now it's definitely more of a benefit approach as they see the value in our work and our students and what we're able to bring to the table. You know, internships really need to be supportive environments. And over the past 3 years, we've really learned how to better equip our employer partners. So an organic response to what we've been doing for the past few years has been embedding racial equity training in our summer orientations. And additionally, we've created our employer think tank series. We're still looking for a better name for that, but we decided to focus on the work and not the name. So it's called our employer think tank series, and we offer it on a quarterly basis. And that was kind of like, you know, a sunny side to the whole COVID situation, is that we're able to offer these virtually. So since this launched in 2020, we've had about 200 professionals from over 60 unique organizations attend. And each session is focused on race equity and just how to dig deeper into the work and better engage young people of color. And most recently, we started a supplemental newsletter to provide additional resources for our partners.
Thank you. And, you know, through COVID, we're always looking for those silver linings, and we're finding that, you know, there are spaces where we can actually make our programs more robust through those unique challenges and opportunities that have presented to us. So I'm gonna turn it over to Cassandra for the same question.
Well, I'll start off by sharing the ERGs, or what we call at KeyBank, Key Business Impact Networking Groups, short for, or long version for KBING. We actually launched our KBINGs back in 2004. So we've had KBINGs or ERGs for a really long time, but in the journey of establishing KBINGs or expanding our KBINGs, one, I wouldn't say hard lesson, but learning opportunity. When you think about ERGs, they're employee-led. And this volunteer work that is done on top of the normal job that every employee has. And so it's important to, or we've learned over time, it's really important to not only get the leadership buy-in in establishing ERGs, but also getting the support to help identify the employees who will help lead the ERGs. And I have found over time that we are asking a lot of employees, and so it has to be something, in my opinion, that employees are really passionate about and truly interested in helping not only lift in some situations, but maintain our ERG chapters across the footprint. And we're, now that we've had them for so long, we're really looking into how can we make sure that the additional work and effort that employees are putting into employee resource groups are being recognized and rewarded and supported in all ways, in all levels. And so that's, you know, honestly been a bit of a, like I said, a learning opportunity for us over time, but we're getting there. And I still believe we have one of the, from my understanding, a really strong ERG compared to what I hear in the market. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Leadership buy-in is so key to any of these initiatives, especially one like an ERG, and finding folks to continue those efforts internally is a challenge. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Laura, how about you?
Like Cassandra, we started our EBRGs quite a while ago. So our first EBRG will be coming up on its 20-year anniversary next year. So we call them employee business resource groups. So we throw the business word in there because they are connected to the business. And I would say when we started out, we did pretty good with executive sponsorship, and so people at the top level have been involved with the EBRGs to this day. Our governance model was good. And I think we had some solid recognition. What happened is, so we had some governance, and then we kind of gave them the ability to do all their grassroots effort stuff, and we supported that. But as they grew and they started developing chapters, and then they started bringing in chapter leaders, and they were electing people, we found that everyone was kind of doing their own thing. And I wish we sooner put some processes in place for that growth that they were doing naturally. So we did bring them all together, asked for all their input, and got them aligned on all those processes. And because, as Cassandra was saying, they do so much volunteer work on top of their day job, we were able to take some of those things that they were doing by themselves off their plate, and as the Office of Diversity, we handle that now, so they don't have to kind of be bogged down by some of that administrative things. And then we're able to create things like a chapter toolkit that they all can use, because they all have the same leadership positions for their chapters, they all have the same regions for their chapters, and it's much easier to provide them the support they need.
Thank you so much. And I think it's really important to note that facilitating an ERG can be a heavy lift. And so I think that's really great that you're recognizing that and shifting around responsibilities so they have, the ability and the time to be able to be successful in that. My next question is to you, Laura. It's often said that ERGs are safe spaces for employees. And I just want to hear what your thoughts are on that. Are they truly safe from your perspective and from the employee's perspective?
In our organization, they are, and I think they're meant to be that. It's a place where people come together and they network and they get mentored and they do professional development and they reach out and serve the community. But underneath that all is they have a shared affinity, or they're an ally, or they're interested in learning more and raising their own awareness. And we have seen our EBRGs create a myriad of different types of activities for people to come and to get involved, from a simple coffee chat to like bringing in a comedian or doing like a Jindo bingo. They provide opportunities for people to have fun, but they also provide serious topics where people can kind of say, hey, this is my lived experience. Is the company aware of this? Can they help support us in this space? So we have a lot of confidentiality around membership, around when they come together and do their leadership development activities and when they go through mentoring. We also found that during COVID, when there was a lot of things up in the air, I was able to host virtual open houses for all of our national and chapter leaders every 2 weeks, so they could just come together and talk about whatever they wanted to. And we had a confidentiality statement at the beginning. So we do have a culture where people can come together and share safely, and people kind of tell us anecdotally, without being asked, like, if it wasn't for the EBRGs, I would have left here a long time ago, or I really feel like I belong to this company because I have the EBRG that I connect to, or these are the people I work with, but these are the people from my EBRG community and they feel more like a family. So those are the things that we hear.
Just want to ask a quick follow-up before I put that question over to Cassandra. You mentioned, this culture where they feel like they can come forward. Do you believe that the development of the ERGs helped establish that culture where they felt comfortable enough to come forward with certain topics or concerns?
Absolutely. And I feel like, I was with the organization before we had the EBRGs and then after, and between having two things, the EBRGs and a formal mentoring program, as well as having the top-down leadership support where our executives were walking the talk. They were involved, they were at the events, they were sponsoring activities, they showed up, and they were role models. They mentored individuals. They sponsored activities and events for the EBRGs. I think that the combination of those three things really helped create that culture of inclusion.
Fantastic. Thank you. Cassandra, how about you in terms of safe spaces?
Absolutely. And a lot of what Laura shared is very similar to KeyBank as well. I would say, over the last 18 months, everything from COVID to the murder of George Floyd, being able to create a safe space for employees to talk and to share and to learn from each other has been so important and critical to really the overall well-being of our employees. And so having that safe space and knowing that people can share and be open and it's going to be held in confidence. And I think, that's exactly what our KeyBanks have been able to do for employees. Last summer, after the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, our African Heritage KeyBank actually kicked off what we call now our Social Justice and Racial Equity series. And when it first kicked off, it was an opportunity, honestly, just to get employees together and to share. And again, to create that safe space that allowed people to be vulnerable. It allowed people to just listen. And it also allowed to help educate and bring greater understanding and awareness. And we've continued those conversations now at a much larger scale. We actually have monthly social justice, racial equity conversations for the entire enterprise. And we bring in guest speakers, thought leaders, and authors to those as special guests. And that's just a great example of something that started organically from one, KeyBank, and now has developed into something that, honestly, kind of going back to what Laura shared, the feedback we get from employees is just thank you. Like, thanks for creating this space. Thanks for allowing us to have these important conversations. And I think we all know that these conversations weren't happening pre-COVID, right? And it's done, in my opinion, it's brought people closer together. And like I said, it's also just helped in just seeking greater understanding across groups, which I think is really, really important for all of us, not only within the workplace, but also within our community.
That's fantastic. And we have heard the same thing from students in our schools. They just appreciate the space to have these conversations. And when they grow organically, that's just the best way to grow these types of programs. It's fantastic. I will just quickly note, if you do have questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. And if there is time at the end of the call, we only have 45 minutes, but we'll try to throw some of those in there. I noted there is one about data, and we do have some questions around data coming up. So Stephanie, question for you regarding internships. What's the one thing that you want folks on this call to really know about them?
I would say that we should keep in mind that an internship is a learning experience. And although it's easy to want students to come in with, the exact experience that you're looking for, they're really about career exploration. Many employers use their internship programs to, hopefully recruit full-time talent. I totally understand that. But many students, they're just trying to figure out what they want to do. I remember being in college. I had, no idea I would even be working in workforce development. I was just going through the motions. So I'll speak more on this report later in the session, but last summer, we had a research project completed and our students identified career preparedness, career exploration, guidance and support, and networking for their primary reasons for engaging with our internship program. So they were really, they just wanted to figure out what their next steps were supposed to be. So I would encourage employers to focus more on a student's interest and enthusiasm. And I also want to point out that if you're looking at a student's resume and they lack experience, it doesn't automatically mean that they're less ambitious or less talented. There are genuine barriers that so many students face while they're in college. Some have to work and support themselves. Some have family obligations or academic challenges that really take priority over the extracurriculars and the things that you would see that would beef up a resume. So even, an intern, they may not become a full-time employee, but you'll still get to play an incredible role in shaping a young professional and hopefully contribute to our local workforce. So that's what I hope that folks get from that.
So true. I don't know that many teenagers that know exactly what they want to do yet. Some of them know exactly what they want to do, but many of them are just looking for opportunity to explore. And I think that's a really important point to note with potential hosts of interns and employers. So switching back to ERGs, and this question is for Laura. What inspired your organization to use them in the first place? So Laura, can you kind of go back? I know you mentioned they've been around for a while, but what was that original inspiration?
I think part of it, honestly, originally we had a class action lawsuit that Sodexo inherited from another company, and they wanted to, and it was around hiring promotional practices for African Americans. But overall, when we looked at underrepresented and underserved communities, we wanted to make sure that we didn't dip our toe into the diversity space, but that we really kind of leapt into it. And so we thought that, and I talked about this a little bit already, that these groups came together to ensure a full and inclusive environment for individuals, but also because we have that B in our employee business resource groups, we wanted to work with the affinity groups so that we could drive the company's mission, values, and goals, and have them be part of our diversity strategy. Our ERGs are an extension of the Office of Diversity, and they really help assist in recruiting, retention, and the development of diverse talent. They, I think one of the things that they do really well is they raise up issues that are happening in their community, and they say, hey, for the LGBT community, what about partnership benefits? Or for when our disability group started, they were like, why don't we have accommodations that's best in class? And we want disability training. And, so they kind of bubble up a lot of things that help shape the organization when we may have not gotten to some of those things yet as a diversity group. So we listen, we learn, and they help to inform processes and policies in the organization. And they also help to, they also help with our branding, because we reach out to communities and we get involved in them. And in fact, one of the things we do is kind of related to internships. So we kind of do one-day internships called She Works for our gender groups. So we go out to our local communities and we look for, and to our schools, and we look for individuals who want access to learning about our company and the potential for having a career there. And we let them do like a job shadow for a day with a manager who is aligned with what they're interested in learning about. So there's all different types of ways that we connect our ERGs to our business strategy, and they, together with the Office of Diversity, really create that web of influence throughout the organization.
Thank you so much. Cassandra, can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for the ERGs at KeyBank?
Yeah, can I just say ditto? what Laura said? No, it is again very similar. And when our KeyBank were established in 2004, I wasn't at KeyBank. I joined in 2012. But I can respond to or share what keeps our KeyBank going and why they've really enhanced the culture here at KeyBank. When I think about just establishing our KeyBank outside of our headquarters. So we have actually 112 chapters across our footprint. And we have 12 different KeyBanks or ERGs. And I'll name them in a minute. But the primary focus or purpose for our KeyBank really stems from helping foster and creating an environment of inclusion and equity and that sense of belonging, going back to what you guys shared earlier, Eric. And for us, it's also looking at how can our KeyBanks help us in delivering our DEI strategies for the enterprise and also business outcomes. And we have very specific initiatives or pillars or priorities that all the KeyBanks create strategic goals towards. So it's recruitment and retention. And when I was, many years ago, when I first came to KeyBank, I was actually in recruiting. And so I managed recruiting efforts in the West region. I sit in Seattle, Washington. And for me, selfishly, I wanted to start a KeyBank chapter out here because I needed help recruiting. I needed help recruiting diverse talent. And so, and at the time, when I did my, talking to different employees who had been with Key for a long time, I had learned, oh yeah, we've had some chapters, but then they dissolved. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's get one started. And I went to senior leadership, got their approval and support, and everything kind of blossomed from there. But going back to our priorities, recruiting and retention is critical, and it's still important, right? Recruiting diverse, top qualified talent is a goal actually for KeyBank. We also, the other priority is professional development. And so helping our employees in their career journey here at KeyBank, providing them with the resources and tools to be successful, getting them the exposure, the networking, and building the relationships, not only within their market, but across the enterprise. And that's what has really benefited me during my time here at KeyBank. And then the other two, community engagement. We have our KeyBanks are, many of them are aligned with a nonprofit partner within their market. And so, for example, our Pride KeyBank here in Seattle is aligned with our youth care, a nonprofit called Youth Care. And then we have our young professional group who's aligned with Treehouse. And so we really, the employees who are part of KeyBank are super engaged in the community and looking to provide, that extra support and engagement in each of our markets. And then finally, business innovation. So again, going back to what Laura said as well, really leaning into our KeyBank members and our executive sponsors of KeyBank to help get insight and perspective for clients and prospective clients, but also leaning in and getting their perspective around different product offerings and services and how we approach our business within each of our markets, which is very unique across our footprint. So, so the impact again of ERGs and the establishment of ERGs, I've been a part of it since day one, and I feel like it's critical to everything we just shared, but also just more importantly, the engagement of employees. And Laura said it earlier as well, I myself stay at KeyBank because of my involvement with our KeyBank. It really does help in just building those relationships. People are building friendships through ERGs and real connections, mentors and sponsors from their engagement in ERGs. So that's why it's important and valuable to an organization and to our organization.
Thank you so much. It's interesting. Both of you mentioned kind of the immersion of these groups, one of which being reactive and one of them being proactive. And, oftentimes in this work, we are reacting to things that happen and therefore we start programs. I'm guessing that some folks that are on this call are kind of wondering where to start with some of these pieces. And of course, we want to definitely start from a proactive place. So these can be very, amazing programs to help your business or organization from a proactive space. I love the idea of ERGs being immersed in your organization. And, we talked a little bit about this, but how do you really keep the members energized as they, as they become bigger. And there's also more added on to this. You have to, work to keep them going. So, and how do you integrate them, how do you keep them going and integrate existing employees into those ERGs? So Cassandra, I'll start with you on this one, and, just keep them going, folding in existing employees and new employees.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I'll share quickly, and I won't be so long-winded this time. We share our KeyBank overview and information during the new hire process. And so we make sure that our hiring managers and our new employee orientation provides information for every new hire to learn about what a KeyBank is. And so that's the first kind of step. And then in regards to just keeping employees engaged and integrated and excited about KeyBank, honestly, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge, but everyone joins a KeyBank for their own kind of personal reason, right? Some people join for career development. Some people join because of the community engagement. Some people join because of the networking and kind of hanging out, enhancing business acumen, just being able to, like I said earlier, build friendships as well. And so all of those are really personal reasons. And when I think about employees who decide to join, the ones that, kind of reach out to me to just get information, general information, those are typically the reasons why. And so most people stay engaged for those same reasons. And most people, if they decide not to be a part of a KeyBank or to pull back their level of engagement, typically it's because of workload, right? Because everything that we're doing is on top, again, of our regular job responsibilities. And so sometimes people find that they can't manage both, especially if they're in a leadership role or some type of role leading a chapter. And then the other times, maybe they just decide to leave KeyBank. And so obviously they're not part of the KeyBank. But for the most part, it's that personal reason that keep people engaged. And I feel pretty confident that many people stay engaged because of the relationships that they're able to build.
Absolutely. I'm guessing your answer is probably similar, but Laura, I wanted to put this question over to you as well.
Yeah, I think Cassandra's spot on. And I would say, because we're talking about that it is personal, the reasons that you stay engaged. My reason for being engaged is, I had the great honor of serving in our disability employee business resource group called SOAR from when it started till like the first 6 years in that voluntary role. And then eventually I joined the Office of Diversity full-time, and now I support all the ERGs. But for me, it was really about purpose-filled work because my father had, emotional and mental health issues growing up. And I just said as a kid, I will make changes to this when I grow up. And it gave me the opportunity to do something that was so personal for me to make a difference. And I think a lot of people, feel like they're making a difference in the organization, to their affinity group, to their communities, to their clients. And I think Cassandra's right about networking and meeting people. We joke around and say our ERGs are networking on steroids. You are able to meet people you would never meet from different segments and all different types of jobs, because we're a highly matrixed organization with 100,000 employees in the US alone. And if you're at a unit out in California, you're not going to meet from, school services. You're not going to meet someone from Philadelphia in corporate services unless you're part of the ERGs. And all of a sudden you have a friend who shares the same mission, purpose, and values that you do, and you're working together and you get to know each other and you're friends for life. I would say the other thing that keeps our members engaged is we do a lot of cross EBRG work, and we have always done that. But when Black Lives Matter, George Floyd happened last year, all of the EBRGs stood up and really worked with our African American Leadership Forum. That group, they all kind of did a co-sponsored cross EBRG event throughout the year with them, and they have done that. So people who can identify to more than one dimension of diversity have a place to go. And they're like, okay, there's people, who are looking at these multiple dimensions all at the same time. And when they were doing the professional development just to kind of their own group, they were not really broadening the horizons for increasing their membership. And by reaching out cross EBRG and also opening things up to all members of the organization and then asking them to join when they register for things, that's different ways that they've increased their membership and been able to engage more people. And I'll just say one last statement. When the COVID happened and then Black Lives Matter happened, I said, listen, the employees are looking for a place to go. And if you build it, they will come. And they created maybe 60, 70 events last year with 6, 7, 8,000 attendees. So although we were stretched thin, although COVID was happening, and although there was a lot going on, people needed that connection more than ever, and they came. So employee resource groups do make a huge difference.
Thank you so much for highlighting that. I think you're right. In the last year, I think many people have felt really isolated, and so in lots of different ways. And so having that framework in place already to make those connections, so amazing. We're starting to run out of time here. 45 minutes is just not enough time to have these conversations. But I do want to make sure we talk about the data piece here, because data is so important when you are developing and creating initiatives such as internship programs or ERGs, and also knowing how to make sure that they continue on and are fruitful. So Stephanie, we know that Say Yes has an impact dashboard, which is amazing. Can you share some of the results of your internship program and that light?
Sure. So we've seen some amazing growth in our program over the past few years. So pre-COVID, we're up to 90 interns working with usually 50 to 60 employers each year across various industries, including healthcare, law, arts and culture, nonprofits, higher ed, and in the private sector. And since we started our program, we've more than doubled our employer partnerships. Another thing is we survey our employers after each internship. And so from that data, there's a lot of short-term successes. And in a typical year, we're not in a typical year right now, we have up to 5 students each year who are offered either permanent positions or they have their internships extended for another semester or through the academic year. And this isn't a requirement for our partners at all, but it definitely highlights the positive experiences and the value added by our students. We've also seen that our internship program has been a persistence tool, and it's also an entry point for other Say Yes programming. So a lot of our interns have gone on to become Say Yes ambassadors, near peer mentors, members of our alumni network, participants in our Boys and Men of Color Youth Leadership Program, and we even have some Say Yes staff who were interns previously. And lastly, every single year, our interns really reflect the demographics of the BPS school system, the Buffalo Public School System. So 80% of students in BPS identify as young people of color. So that's pretty consistent with our intern program every single year. And we also tend to have a lot more young women than men in our program. Those are some interesting points of data.
Those are interesting, and I love that it's both quantitative and qualitative, because you need both when we're doing this type of assessment of data. Cassandra, can you tell us a little bit about how the data results are tracked at KeyBank? You have a very large organization and a lot of folks.
All about data.
Yes. So a couple of metrics that or KPIs that we track would include the number of employees or members who are engaged in KeyBank and the number of chapters we have across our enterprise. And so those are two really important metrics for us that are actually part of our overall diversity, equity, inclusion goals and objectives. And in addition to tracking that information, we also regularly meet with our KeyBank leadership. So we have a similar structure to Laura's, but we have executive sponsors, we have KeyBank leaders or champions, and then we have chapter presidents, and then we have the members. And so it's important that we meet regularly with the KeyBank leadership, is what we call them, to connect, make sure that they have all the tools and resources they need to lead and engage the employees who are participating in KeyBank. And each KeyBank is also responsible for, each KeyBank group is responsible for putting together an annual strategic plan. And that plan includes those pillars or the priorities that I talked about earlier: recruitment, retention, community engagement, professional development, and business innovation. And we meet, like we said, on a regular basis to review how are they progressing towards their strategy, do they have any concerns, do they need resources, more information to help them execute on those commitments. So those are just a few ways of us measuring and following up with our KeyBank leaders and the chapters and what they're doing in each of our markets.
Thank you. We're running low on time, but Laura, I'd love for you to, if you could respond to the data piece very quickly. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, our Office of Diversity does a lot of quantitative and qualitative data capturing around hires, promotions, and qualitative data amount of events and activities that we do from the Office of Diversity perspective. I track all of our employee business resource group events and activities, the number of attendees, anything that they do in the community, if they donate, how much, what they donate, and I roll those numbers up at the end of every month. Every 2 years, I do a engagement survey just for the EBRG members. So, and we didn't do one in 2020. So the last one we did was in 2018. And I'll share a few stats real quick with you. We had a 41% increase in desire to stay with the organization because they were involved with an EBRG. 12%, it helped them, being part of the EBRG, helped them attain a promotion. 39% increase in exposure to senior management. So there's a lot of visibility with senior leaders. 59% increase in engagement, 34% increase in performance, 34% EBRG involvement contributed to business development, and 70% would recommend others to join the EBRGs. So I'll stop there.
Those are some amazing stats. And, when companies and organizations are looking to retain talent, I mean, that's really important data to have at your fingertips. Well, such a great discussion we've had here today. We are at 44 out of the 45 minutes, and we could probably go another 40 minutes. I see a whole list of questions we have in the chat, which unfortunately we don't have time to get to. I would really like to thank Cassandra, Stephanie, and Laura for their participation in this amazing panel. I know that I learned a lot in the past 45 minutes, and I'd also like to thank all of our participants as well for taking time out of your day to learn more about how to make your business and or organization more inclusive by developing internships and ERGs. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we hope to see you in about 15 minutes at 4 o'clock at the Recruitment and Retention Best Practices panel on the main stage. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Is it just us now?
Except me, I gotta get out. I think I gotta leave again.
That was awesome, everybody.
Really good. You guys are great. I so appreciate your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll get those questions out to the group and then you guys can answer them and we'll post them out on the website because there were quite a few questions that we didn't get to. Eric, you were a master of maneuvering through that time. I mean, you kept everybody in check, so awesome. I so appreciate you guys and your support. So we'll see you at the main stage.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everyone.
It's always
Bye.
easy when you have amazing panelists. Thank you. Have a great day.
And moderators.
I just asked the question.